Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are tackling a huge topic. We're going to try and map out the entire human life course.
So let's start with a big question. As you go through your life, how much of that path is actually your own? Today we're going to dig into that by weaving together some incredible findings from sociology, psychology, and anthropology to really get a handle on the hidden forces that shape our journey.
All right, so here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at how the journey begins on unequal footing. Then we'll ask that age-old question, do we really get older and wiser? After that, we'll explore the cultural blueprints that guide us. And finally, we'll put all the pieces together to map out the path.
Okay, let's dive right in. The thing is, none of us start this race from the same line. And you know, a really powerful sociological study on health makes this crystal clear.
So, the first big idea we need to get our heads around is something called intersectionality. And it sounds complicated, but the concept is pretty straightforward. Think about all the parts of your identity, your race, your gender, your social class. The theory says these things don't just add up one by one. No, they intersect, they overlap, and they actually multiply each other's effects. This creates a totally unique reality for every single person, with its own set of advantages and disadvantages.
And to see this idea in the real world, check this out. One study tracked a group of people's body mass index, BMI, all the way from age 13 to 31. And what they found was pretty stark. The health gaps that were already there in their teens, well, for many, they didn't just stay the same. They got a lot wider over time.
And this chart, wow, it really brings a powerful concept to life. It's called cumulative inequality. Take a look at the data for Black women in this study. You can see they not only started out with the highest average BMI, but that gap just kept growing at the fastest rate over the years. It's a perfect example of how an initial disadvantage can snowball and compound as we get older.
So what's the big takeaway here? It's that even when you control for things like money or education, the health benefits just aren't the same for everyone. And this quote from the study really nails it. Socioeconomic resources do not confer the same health benefits across racial, ethnic, and gender groups. Basically, our starting line in life is deeply, deeply shaped by the social structures we're born into. It's layer one of our map.
Okay, so that's the social terrain of our map, right? The landscape we're dropped into. But what about our internal compass, the one we use to navigate life? Let's talk about our emotions. Do we actually get better at handling them as we age?
I mean, we all kind of believe it, right? There's this comforting idea summed up perfectly in this Frank Lloyd Wright quote. The longer I live, the more beautiful life becomes. We just assume that as we get older, we get wiser, calmer, better at dealing with our feelings.
Well, the science is a little more complicated. There was this incredible psychological study that followed people and how they regulated their emotions over a huge span of time, from age 23 all the way to 85. And what they found, it really challenges that simple older and wiser narrative. The data tell us a very different story. Okay. So before we get to the juicy findings, we need to understand what researchers are even talking about. Think of it like this. We all have an emotional toolkit, and the tools we use to manage our feelings can be grouped into about 5 main families. They range from being super proactive, like just avoiding a situation you know will stress you out, all the way to reactive stuff, like just bottling up your feelings and hiding them.
All right, and here's where it gets really surprising. The common assumption, the theory, is that as we get older, we become more flexible with these tools. We get better at picking the right one for the job, right? Well, this study found the opposite. The older adults in the study were actually less flexible. They tended to fall back on the same ingrained habits and reported using suppression, just hiding their emotions, way more often.
So this really throws a wrench in that whole older and wiser idea, doesn't it? What it suggests is that as we age, our internal compass, our emotional habits, might actually become more rigid and set in their ways, not necessarily more adaptable or wiser. So we've got the social landscape we're born into, and we've got our internal emotional compass. But there's a third layer to this map, the cultural blueprints. These are the signposts, the traditions, the rituals that guide us through life's biggest moments. And to see this in action, we're going to look at an anthropological study of the West Babar community in Indonesia. It's all about their traditional marriage rituals, and it gives us a fantastic window into how culture really provides structure to our journey. See, for the West Babar people, marriage isn't a one-day event. It's a whole process. It's a structured journey with 3 totally distinct phases, and each step has its own set of rituals and its own social meaning, designed to guide not just the couple, but their entire families through this massive life transition. And here's the beautiful part. Woven in to every single one of these rituals are their core cultural values.
something they call Coleto. These are ideas like cooperation, mutual respect, and social care. And by embedding them in these ceremonies, the community constantly reinforces its social fabric. It provides everyone with a clear, shared map to follow during these big moments.
Okay, so now it's time to put it all together. Let's zoom out and combine these three different layers, the social, the psychological, and the cultural, and see what our complete map of the human life course looks like.
And really, this is the most important takeaway. To understand your own life's journey, or anyone's, you have to look at all three layers at once. You have the social landscape, that unequal terrain we start on. You have your internal compass, the emotional habits you use to find your way. And you have the cultural signposts, those shared rituals that mark the big milestones. They all work together.
So, knowing all this, knowing your path is shaped by these powerful, often hidden forces, does that mean we're just puppets? No, not at all. It just means we have a better map, a more complete one. It helps you see the terrain you started on, understand the compass you've built for yourself, and read the cultural signposts around you. And that leaves us with a really important question for you to think about. Now that you can see the map more clearly, how does it change the way you see your own journey?